Now, I gave you the big speech last night about why the American election campaign matters, why the American election matters, why the consequences of the United States affects us. Put simply, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? If there's a problem with their economy, we end up being part of a GFC, and as most recently happened, $900 cheques had to be handed out. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't go to work and I don't pay tax for $900 cheques to be handed out. So it sort of matters who runs the American economy. It also matters about whether or not a president wants to go to war or not. Last time I checked, we've signed up to both of the most recent wars. In Afghanistan, we stayed because the United States wanted us to stay. In Iraq, we were there for as long as the Americans wanted us to be there. And we'll get into the substance a little bit later, but I want to talk all about the style at the start of tonight's show. There are a lot of things that the Americans do very badly, but there are a lot of things that Americans do incredibly well. And what they do is make some bloody good television. As you saw here on Sky News, we were able to get a look-see at one of the very best coverages, and that was the ABC America coverage. Now, all of the big American networks did huge things today to keep not just their viewers watching, but to keep literally numbers coming in, being entertaining. And it really is a model for how we should do election nights here in Australia. Now, I liked that in NBC, they turned the entire Rockefeller Plaza into Election Plaza. They even got down to literal stunts where on ice rinks there were the ice rink out the front of 30 Rock was turned into a giant map of America, and colours changed as the different states happened. For CNN, they had all of the graphics and all of the gadgets, and thankfully they didn't do the hologram thing again. But they were able to change the Empire State Building to the colour of the party that represented the new president, that being blue for Barack Obama. There were all sorts of things that were happening, and as we saw here on Sky News via ABC, they virtually rented out Times Square. Big, brash and good television. We can do this in Australia. Now, obviously, we don't have the same money, and nobody on our television screens is called Wolf. But take it from a bloke who talks about politics with a beard. We can do better than some of the election coverages that we have been served up for a very long time. And principally, there is one major barrier between the way that we traditionally drudge our way through all of those annoying numbers, and we pretend that the first 2 minutes of the numbers from Tasmania matter, and that is the actual tally room itself. Now, anyone who has had even dial-up internet connected to their house for anything like the past 15 years would know that the tally room doesn't actually need to exist anymore in Australian politics. In fact, at the last election, there was a plan that the government wasn't even going to have a tally room. But because a few people who cover politics in Canberra whinged about it, you and I had to pay $200,000 for a completely useless board and that whole shed to be put together for the last election campaign. We don't need it. We don't need to spend $200,000 to give an elaborate backdrop so Karl Stefanovic can talk about politics without a jacket on. Wow. We can do better. The first thing is get rid of this national, centralised, stupid, old-fashioned idea about the board. Use the same numbers that everyone else can get off the bloody AEC website, let alone all of the other information that networks can have, and start doing things in lots of different ways. Politics is vital, it is important, but it can also be entertaining. I'm not saying it needs to be turned into circuses and stupidity, but I think we can grow out of the way that these things used to be done in the 80s. I think it's a good idea, and I'm tired of paying for a $200,000 television set just so people can, frankly, run around and talk to each other behind the scenes. Election nights should be about one thing and one thing only, giving you information, but also giving you some fun TV to watch.